Hello, you're right. Welcome back to another episode of
I love
Only.
that you're bringing the energy in the first 5 seconds.
We
You
yeah,
know, the first 5 seconds are the most important part of a YouTube video, a podcast. We don't have a jingle, we don't have an intro. So the people who can't even see us, at least I had a little smile here. People listening on Spotify or wherever else it's available.
Spotify. Here we are on the
Spotify.
Spotify. There, here you
wherever
listeners. Welcome back.
wherever they're listening to it, and you're just all right.
Well, welcome back to another episode of Only Fools and Scorers. It's me, Spraggy, with my good friend Fintan Hand, better known as Easy Days Online. Hopefully, we've captivated you and bring you in after a week's hiatus. We took an international break because, let's be honest, who really cares about international football outside of major competitions, Fintan? The Nations League is a joke. It's glorified friendlies. I couldn't really care less. The only talking point which we'll get to, maybe we'll talk some international football later during our Aston Villa segment, because Jack Grealish is a footballing god.
I
And
mean, he's
Gareth
the
Southgate
greatest
doesn't
player
like him
that's
because he's
ever
basically a
played in the
PE
Premiership.
teacher.
He's definitely the greatest player that's ever played in the Premiership. I wasn't sure. Last week I was thinking it's either Thierry Henry or Grealish. But after this week, like I'm fully sold. I'm
That's
thinking big move to Real Madrid. I'll have to accept it. Probably what's Messi's record? 6 Ballon d'Ors in a row or so? I don't know. Maybe not in a row, but maybe six altogether. I think Grealish will have 11 Ballon d'Ors.
minimum.
Like he'll minimum. So I think he's 24 now. So maybe next year gets his first at 25 and then just straight through to 35. And
Yeah,
then he comes back and finishes his career at Villa. And obviously at this point we're well in the Champions League. And he just wins one Champions League with Villa and retires and goes down as the greatest player in history.
it's a very reasonable timeline and akin to when you predicted that Egypt would win the World Cup in 2016. So let's kick off our recap of or our discussions of this week's Premier League action. Everton versus Liverpool, which was a quiet game. Another
Not
another
much going on. Merseyside
uneventful affair.
derbies. It was obviously another game that VAR is the main talking point. And we can sit here and say, oh, we don't want to talk about VAR. But the reality is, given the current state of the game and how it's going, it's almost going to be impossible to not discuss VAR. It's just
It's just a part
every
and parcel
single
now, isn't it?
game is an influence. And I know you've touched on this, and I know it's what we've talked about, but they've gone so much further in making decisions contentious where you're like, oh, I'm not sure about that. Whereas before it was an eye test and the lads in the pub would talk about it for 5 minutes. But now it's all week long. People are like, that offside was 2 millimeters on. And it is a joke, but there was obviously some extremely big decisions in this game that went against Liverpool because Jordan Pickford's mum was 100% in charge of VAR on Saturday, and there is no doubt about it. But the first one was the red card. Pickford comes out. He attempts to murder Van Dijk.
Yeah, it was GBH, ABH. I'm never sure which one, but it was a ridiculous challenge. Now I did hear some sort of argument that the whistle had already gone or something, and
That's
like
why
technically it's not
100%.
in play. But again, okay then he's smashed him after the whistle's gone. It's still a thing. You can't just go around hitting people.
No, I know.
I
I
mean,
mean, Martial right got sent off. The ball wasn't in play.
sure, if it's
You know, and
if
he
the game's in
also
flow, he's come in at knee height. It's a sort of challenge that
career
a
ender
lad on a
really.
Sunday says like I'm going in knee height to hurt someone. Like a maniac.
Yeah.
I don't understand how he's gotten away with it. And of course, the unfortunate outcome of that is not only that perhaps a deserved red card wasn't given, but Virgil van Dijk, and I'm speaking as a Man United fan, and I think, allegiances aside, you don't want people getting injured as a result of challenges like that, no matter
He
what
might
team you
never come
support.
back the same way. And I know that's
Sure.
like a quite pessimistic view to have it, but some players who suffer those ACLs, it's a little bit different because he's a defender. And often the players who don't come back the same way are the players who depended on their pace or their explosiveness. But who knows how he's going to come back? And it's obviously going to change Liverpool's season. He was definitely the main signing, along with Allison, who changed their fortunes and turned them from very attractive attacking team into absolute unit, best team in the league, best team in Europe over the course of the past few years. But I don't think he meant it.
I
I
don't
don't
think
think
he
he
meant it in a
I think he
malicious sense.
hesitated and
Yeah.
he's just has no confidence at the moment. If you watch it back, he kind of goes, he stops, and he goes again. And it was horrendous. Don't get me wrong. Like it was a terrible challenge, but these things do happen in football. it's very unfortunate. But some of the Liverpool fans on Twitter, they honestly are next level. Like, I enjoy watching Liverpool and I enjoy what they do, and I think Klopp's done a great job. But one part of me just wanted them never to win a league title. And I'm, Liverpool aren't my rivals.
Sure,
Like, I don't
sure.
care.
I mean,
But
as a
their
United fan,
fans
obviously,
are
there's like
so insufferable on the internet. They are the absolute worst. I've seen people, first of all, they're signing petitions that they want Jordan Pickford actually, dealt with by the police.
Yeah, I know.
Of course,
someone
right?
was in my chat yesterday. Someone was, for those of you who don't know, we stream on Twitch. And someone was
Yes.
in my Twitch chat yesterday and said, Spraggy, did you see the game at the weekend? There's a petition going around Jordan Pickford to be arrested. For GBH or whatever, gross bodily harm, and dealt with it as an assault. Now, two things are true here. I definitely don't think it's any malice from Pickford of like, I'm going to injure someone. Like you said, I think it was you get caught in a bad situation, you kind of brute force your way out of it, right? You just go in aggressively to
Keepers
try and...
get away with a bit more as well in general.
Sure. Two, it's terrible that Virgil van Dijk has been injured. And it genuinely, of course it is. Like, I had a friend who I'll just name drop every episode, Ribs, who did... It was actually a non-contact injury of his ACL. But he never came back the same. He lost pace, and effectively it cost him his career because his knee never, rehabbed correctly.
Fully recovered.
So this is a terrible thing that might not just affect him for the rest of this season, obviously, but for his career. And three, whilst these things are true, these things happen in football. It's part and parcel of the game, and everyone who signs up to play has to accept a certain amount of risk that you are going to get injured and that you will end up on the sidelines, and people get injured and it happens. But you're absolutely right in this whole, and listen, it's not all Liverpool fans, of course,
No,
but there is there's a certain amount
minority
of people who are insufferable in there. Like, this is the greatest injustice that's ever happened, and actually,
I mean, they're the same when Mo Salah got done by Ramos, and
the whole when he pulled
don't
him
get
over
me
his shoulder
wrong
thing, just a madness. And it's like these things happen. And Jamie Carragher actually put forward some very reasonable comments about it, saying, it's happened to him. He's nearly he broke someone's leg. He's had his leg broken, and it's just the nature of the game, right? And it's
especially a Merseyside derby, right? Like, the tensions are a little bit high, and you leave the foot in. But the other thing that I seen them, it's like not too dissimilar to the arrest. They were calling for, when a player injures another player with a challenge like that,
they're banned for the period of the injury.
They are banned for the length of the injury, and I've never heard such nonsense, because who is to determine whether there's intent?
Well, it's just straight up stupid, because imagine you injure someone, and because of other injuries they have to retire. Like, you retired now? Like, it's just nonsense. It's emotionally driven, seeking justice in a spot where there are rules in place to apply justice, quote unquote, right? Was justice done here? Maybe not. Maybe he should have been red carded and face a 3-game ban. Actually, that would probably help Everton.
One thing I want to ask you, yes, that is the joke going around, that if Pickford was out, it actually would be more of a punishment to the teams and have to face Everton and vice versa. But do you think, are the days gone when they can punish a player after the game? Now, I don't know the letter of the law, so it might just be factual that it is done. But in the past, if a challenge like that went down, he definitely would have faced action after the game, because the referee could have missed it. But now they have VAR, so it's obviously been seen by somebody.
Yeah.
So how can they then decide to ban them, unless it's like a punch in the face that they somehow miss completely, right?
Yeah, I don't. The honest answer is I don't know. Obviously, there's like an appeal process for red card still, right? Welcome back to another episode of Uninformed with Fintan Hand and Benjamin Spraggy. We actually don't know the FA rules or Premier League rules. With regards
someone
to
will get at us in the comments.
Just have a go at watching this.
Yeah.
Then we'll know.
But also, the game overall, I thought Liverpool looked very good. I really did. They came out flying. Obviously, they were up against the best team in the league the week before when they lost 7-2 to Aston Villa. They wanted to make a little statement. Try and come back from that. It was going to be hard. They came out of the blocks firing, and they look good overall. But I want to turn into the biggest DCL, Dominic Calvert-Lewin fanboy.
Is it just because
he's like
on Facebook though?
No,
his dad's really hard when he posts on Facebook.
I know, that was very cute, where he talked about how everybody who'd given up on him, how he was not getting his game. I think they might have said he was too small, but then good old Donkey Ferguson and Carlo Ancelotti came in, put the arm around the shoulder, and I never stopped believing, son. And watching you score that game for England brought a tear to my eye.
It was nice,
Like, honestly, I read it was beautiful.
It
And
was
it is like so many people, I'm sure, in football get told they're not good enough. And do you know what? They aren't.
They aren't. But here's
So
the
it's
thing.
nice. It's nice that there's one in a million
Here's
that
the
get
thing.
told when they're 14.
Any dad in any country could have written that Facebook message, because every
Yeah.
dad at some point has been like, my boy's not in the team and it's, you know, he should be and he's the best player. And 99.999% of them are wrong and clouded by their love of their child, which is natural and understandable. But 0.000% of them are Dominic Calvert-Lewin's dad, who's actually class and, you know, is looking better and better each week, I think. And did well scoring the goal for England. This header, the equalising header in this game was really well taken. Rose unbelievably well. And just
looked like Ronaldo against Chelsea in the Champions League final.
It did. It was
the way he just like hung
leap.
and just poof.
Physically, he looks good as well. I feel like he's getting like bigger and stronger and just has a good presence up top, like a real like sort of.
I think he looks amazing. Everything he does.
He holds it up and brings it down and but he's just good on the ball and in the air, and he looks like a real player. Yeah.
I seen a link at the beginning of the season. I might have touched on this before in this podcast already. I'm not sure, that United were willing to pay 80 million, and like I honestly spit out my cornflakes. I was like, what?
Yeah.
80 million for him? I honestly, when I looked at him before the season, I would have thought, you know, if Villa signed him for 20 million, I would have been like, ooh, what are we doing?
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
But anyway, then the second controversial point, the very end of the game, Mane is offside by 2 millimeters. I have seen many replays and I look at it and I cannot see it. They draw these little lines and then they just make one red and one blue and it's offside.
This decision,
and the one thing,
go ahead. I'm getting mad.
One thing that I read about the software, due to the frames per second that they capture the ball at, and like when it leaves his foot, because first of all, you don't know exactly when it's left his foot, right? You can't see it. There's like, I'm just going to pull, it could be like 1 inch or 10 millimeters of give, right?
Yeah.
So then for them to be making these decisions where there is nothing in it, I know we're sick of talking about it, but if that decision goes against me when it's Aston Villa against Birmingham and it's the biggest rivalry, it's the last minute, it's just heartbreaking. It's like, I don't want to, if I was an Everton fan, which I think a lot of Everton fans would agree, you don't want to see that decision, even though you've got yourself a point. It's just not how you want the game to be refereed and how you want it to be officiated and how you want the joy just to be taken away. It's so sad to see players score goals at the moment. They have that moment of relief and then they're like, we can't actually celebrate because this is a good chance to be disallowed.
You know, obviously that's an issue within itself, that the fact that goals get disallowed and people can't celebrate and the goals never really over the line and fans can't immerse themselves in the moment. That's a separate issue with VAR, or that's like a big issue with VAR that we've touched on before. I mean, this particular decision, as a United fan, I love seeing misery come to Liverpool Football Club on the field, but you can't enjoy that. You can't set that precedent, because it needs one human being, one football fan, to look at that and go, I'm not giving it. That's not offside. Yeah. That's not. We all know that that's not offside, and no reasonable person is going to make an argument that that goal should be disallowed. There has to be a rule change, because by the letter of the law, this is offside. I guess this 2 millimeter thing, and
it's not actually VAR's fault, right?
It's not VAR's fault. VAR's just enforcing the rules as it's given. You know, it's garbage in, garbage out. So if you're telling the video assistant referees that this is where we're measuring when the ball left the foot, and that there's a discrepancy there, but this is the point, and now the point is 2 millimeters offside. If that rule stands, then that's offside. But that's not offside. Any football fan looking at that and thinks that offside, you're kidding yourself. You're delusional. Like, I am the most biased United fan, and I will often argue points. I will often argue points against Liverpool or for United. Just, I know I'm wrong, but I do it just to like cause a stir, or it's funny, or whatever. But this is the most outrageous decision I've seen, and Liverpool should have won that game, and they deserved an extra 2 points.
Pickford's a lucky boy though, because that was absolutely pathetic goalkeeping.
Again,
last few moments. I think goalkeepers, and we've talked about it before, I don't know if it's the right thing to do, but maybe just rest him, like take him out of the team for a week or two. it's just he's got so much pressure on him clearly, and not that he's going to be listening to this podcast, but if he goes anywhere on social media, if he reads any newspapers, it's all slating him. So it's just a tough position to be in. Like I don't I don't see how he's going to improve
No, I mean,
with
I
the
think
current
the
state that
problem
he's in.
is with a goalkeeper is you run the risk either way, right? You leave him in and poor performances continue and it snowballs and lack of confidence leads to more poor performances. But then you drop him and it's like it's done. Like, how do you then earn your number one spot back, right? Because you don't typically drop a goalkeeper. So like, if once you're out, you're kind of out-ish, right? Like, there's no
Unless you're the
circumstance.
keeper has a nightmare, and that's not what you want either, right?
Exactly. So
Anyway,
it's tough.
Liverpool get the draw.
Can I
Lots of
just quickly? I
controversy.
know
Go on.
we're banging on about this, but I think this also there's a couple of issues. One, I do think the Pickford problem for Everton is what's going to stop them challenging for the league and possibly cost them top
Challenging
four.
for the league. I
Well,
don't think
like being in and around top four even.
Yeah.
I think the Pickford problem is a problem. But secondly, coming from behind twice does speak volumes to their resilience, and I think they are not only good but seem to have some resilience to them and some resoluteness that will earn them points. But the Pickford problem is a problem. But enough about that. Chelsea, Southampton, Fintan, shoot, go.
Well, basically, we've had a few people in the comments, angry people in the comments, because we haven't given enough airtime to his beloved Southampton, his beloved Danny Ings. But I would argue that the only official segment we have so far on this podcast, and I'm sure more will develop, is did Danny Ings score this weekend? And the answer this week, of course, was yes. But not
the answer
before.
is always yes.
I think it might have been always yes so far, right? I think he might have 3 goals out of 3. But first goals for Timo Werner looked absolutely class. Chelsea going forward are beautiful to watch. They've invested £250 million or so, maybe a little bit less because they never got Rice, but whatever, £220 million. I think the only defensive acquisitions they got were Silva on a free and Mendy in goals for about £20 million. So the rest went on their attack. So their attack should be good. There would be big issues if Frank Lampard spent all this money and the attack wasn't good. But they look fantastic. Werner linking up with Havertz, looking fantastic. Pulisic is back fit. They just looked beautiful going forward. They go 2-0 up. And any time in years gone by when a Premier League team of the caliber of Chelsea, United, Arsenal, City, the top 6 teams, Liverpool, whatever, if they go 2-0 up, the game is over.
Done.
Paddy Power have been paying out for years. When teams go 2-0 up, the bet is done. Like, that's it. They just pay out because they just don't turn it around. But the way this Premier League season's going, it has been madness. And of course, Danny Ings makes it 2-1. Poor El Frank's pulling out his hair. And then, did you see the goal with Kepa and Zuma?
I didn't know. It was a mess.
All right. So if they showed it to you, you would honestly believe that it was a football skit. And I'm not just saying that. You would think that, I don't know who would have wrote it. Maybe the Chuckle Brothers got together and just wrote a football skit or something like that.
Do you remember Danny Baker's own goals and gaffes? He used to have that video of Football Night.
It would
like a scene out of that.
This would have been the lead. This would have been the lead. I've no idea. Kepa comes flying out from a weak back pass from Zuma, lets the ball just roll past him. Just roll past him. Like, I don't even know what happened. He then comes back, the ball hits off the post, hits off Kepa, and just falls to Che Adams, and he just makes it 2-2. And I just don't see how Chelsea are going to be able to compete for the top 4, let alone the title, when they are such a mess. Of course, they go up. Werner assists Havertz. It's a beautiful goal. Again, they look silky. They could be 2, overused word, but generational talents for Germany. They could lead the line for Chelsea for years and years. But then 92nd minute, Theo Walcott sets up a goal for Yannick Vestergaard, and it's 3-3 in the 92nd minute. I don't know. Do you think that maybe if you were a manager, get your Tepri Town cap on? We haven't talked about you being the manager of Tepri Town yet.
For at least 10 minutes, we haven't, no.
Would you just be like, there's so many penalties this year, there's so many goals, let's just concentrate on getting a few clean sheets. Let's be a little bit negative. It feels like everybody's just playing this expansive, let's go 2-0 up, 3-0 up, we keep attacking, we don't stop. Or do you think it's not that, it's just individual errors? It's not how he's setting up structurally.
Well, I think from the sound of it, it's it is a lot to do with sort of expansive football and throwing caution to win for a point. But there are a lot of individual errors that, I mean, obviously this Kepa Zuma situation. Sounds
The worst goal of the season.
like a
And
mess.
there's been some real howlers.
And we're seeing that a lot. We're seeing a lot of the individual errors and mistakes, and we touched on it in a previous podcast about the lack of fans in the ground, perhaps creating like a
more
training ground
atmosphere,
relaxed atmosphere where these mistakes are easier to creep in. I was just clicking around there because I saw this article, Aspilicueta actually talking about Chelsea's defensive issues, saying that they need to score several goals each game to stand a chance of winning. I think it's very
They're
rare
the closest team
for a
to that
player to come out
Newcastle
and say that, right?
1995 Kevin Keegan team where they're like, you score 3, we'll score 4.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Like, they're the closest to it, and it's just. It's
you
so
saw in the West Brom
to...
game, right? They're 3-0 down, they come back to 3-3, but it's like you can't. Aspilicueta here, like I said, it's very rare for a player to come out and say our defense is terrible. We're gonna have to score 4.
Especially when he is a defender,
and he's a part of it.
He's the captain. He's part of it. But I don't know. It's Lampard won titles for Chelsea under the leadership of Mourinho, and I believe Mourinho's team. I think the record is 15 goals let in over the course of the entire season, and that team was just like, you're not scoring. They kept like 10 clean sheets in a row at one point. It was absolutely insane.
Sure,
and now Lampard's
that's
team
a
have let
typical
in
Mourinho style, right? Like part of the bus. I think the danger with that is if you look at this Chelsea squad, its strength, as you said, it has been strengthened in its attack, and the money has been invested in the attack. I think that strategy, that approach, that ethos is absolutely fine if your defense is good enough to pull it off. And clearly Terry, whoever
Carvalho,
their defense, Ashley
Cole
were good enough to do it. And it's fine to do that and use that as your base. And then it's like, we're incredibly resolute at the back. You're not going to score many goals. But the danger for Chelsea is, okay, if you take that on board and play this defensive sort of protect from the back approach to games.
It's not that I think they should play that.
No,
it's just
right,
that
but like
Lampard seems to have gone.
If they do that, they're just. I think they have to do this. I think they're kind of handcuffed by the players that they have. In that, if you sit back, they will concede 4, and then
let's say they're handcuffed.
You put the sort of strings on the people going forward. Like, it might just be best to completely unleash the talent that you have going forward, and then wish for the best back there.
But do you not think then you got to look back at the recruitment of the summer?
Of course, and that's the issue. Is a recruitment thing, and I think the problem that Chelsea have, they've backed themselves into a kind of frustrating corner where they spent all this money on Kepa. He was the most expensive goalkeeper in the time that he was
70 million pounds or something
for a relatively unknown keeper, right? Like, he wasn't.
It was madness. He had a few years in Spain. He'd been
right,
but
he wasn't
for a
like.
few years.
It wasn't like here's the one keeper that everybody wants. Right, to me,
nobody else. I don't think
like,
there was like a bidding war. I think Real Madrid in the January, if I remember correctly, bid around 18 or 20 million euro, and now that got rejected, of course. But for it to be at that, the big issue for that transfer, now we're going like way off the boil here, was that I think Liverpool had just signed Alisson for 65 million.
Right.
And kind of set the tone for expensive keeper. And I think maybe Kepa has a few years on Alisson in terms of being a bit younger. So I think that's what went down there. It was set by that transfer fee rather than by his true value. In the same way when Torres went for 50 million and Andy Carroll went for 35 million.
Yeah, because it's like, well, if he's
that was a product of the other transfer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the problem that they have is once you invest that amount of money in a goalkeeper, it's very hard to say we're kind of done with you, because his market value is in the mud.
It can't be more than 20 million quid, right?
Right, and you kind of then have to start again and reinvest in another.
Not good business, Sprag.
It's just it's bad business, and it's also like I don't know.
They have signed another keeper in Mendy for £22 million, and he got injured. But yeah,
it's a very awkward situation. But again, it's kind of similar to the Pickford thing with Everton, where I think it will cost them points, and it will cost them games, and it might cost them top 4.
You think maybe top 4? Yeah. All right. Anyway. Spurs versus West Ham. Spurs go 3-0 up in the first 20 minutes. Harry Kane and Son looked like the best duo the Premiership's had in my memory for about 20 minutes. And don't get me wrong, they didn't do anything wrong. But the pass from Kane to Son for the first goal, he's just maybe one of the best passers of the ball in the world now. I don't know where his assists are at, but they're on course for record-breaking numbers, I would imagine, after the De Bruyne season last year. Then he scores 2 goals, looks absolutely class. He bangs it off the post still when it's 3-0. But then Mourinho brings on Bale. Now, I don't think the collapse was Bale's fault, but I can't help but feel Mourinho might feel that if he didn't have to bring on Bale and weaken that right hand side, maybe what went down wouldn't have happened. The goals were an absolute joke. The set piece, Mourinho's never going to be happy conceding a goal from a set piece, but it's 3-0. Benjamin Spragg has a bet on for 3-1 and a Spurs win. At this point, he is grinning like a Cheshire cat. He is absolutely buzzing.
Laughing.
Then there's an own goal from Sanchez, which, then it's getting nervy and with the way the season's going. But I really feel the goal that Mourinho will be most annoyed about is like Winks trying to take this like delicate little touch on the side of the box when he had an opportunity to just boot the ball as far as he could, plays the ball into Lanzini, and Lanzini just absolutely buries it for one of the goals of the season so far, and it's 3-3. What? Like, I thought when I seen Spurs 3-0 up, I was like, Spurs actually might win the league.
I genuinely
because nobody has their shit together.
Yeah.
And I was if Spurs can get a bit of form with Mourinho's ability to like grind out results and get clean sheets when it matters, and then you've got Kane, Son, and possibly a firing fit Bale coming back into the team. I was like, if Liverpool have Van Dijk out for the season and City are a bit all over the place, maybe Spurs can win it, and then this happens. So where does it stand? Like, what do you make of this game?
I mean, it's sort of emblematic of the way the Premier League's going this season. It's a mad league so far, and I'm all for it. I mean, it makes for very entertaining viewing. These sorts of results. And again, it's one where you thought it was dead and buried, and I think, what do we have? 3-0 comeback West Brom Chelsea, 3-0 comeback here. We've had so many games turning on their heads and madness like that. I don't really know where this has come from. Because Spurs looked so good in the first 20, 30 minutes, like you said, that I thought maybe they're the league contenders this season, because Son is now Premier League top goal scorer, I believe.
Is he? Yeah. He's on fire.
Kane is getting goals, getting assists, and just looks really, really good. I made the mistake 3 or 4 years ago of thinking that Kane was like a one-season wonder. Because I'm an idiot.
I think it was impossible to not to. He just burst on the scene, having not been able to get his game at Leyton Orient and Norwich or whatever, and then he's just banging in 25 goals. I think it was impossible to see
to look at that and think, okay, that's kind of like a good
product.
Season. But he is the real deal. He is a legitimate, I think, world-class
talent.
footballer. He is. So I don't really know where this late collapse. I believe the first West Ham goal went in post 80 minutes as well, right?
Yeah,
certainly very close. Like, it was 3 goals in very quick succession.
Minute.
It's a very Spursy thing to do. I got a couple of friends who are Spurs fans who sit there, and it's like they're 3-0 up with 10 minutes to go against West Ham, and I'm like, they're in the group chat and they're like shitting themselves. They're like, no, I don't like this. I don't like this. And then they score 1, and I'm like, why are you like? What's your? It's like one consolation goal, like West Ham.
You would think that Mourinho would like just get rid of it, though. That's like the least Mourinho team characteristic of all time to just have these major collapses from winning positions.
Certainly. And you're right, Fintan, in that nobody in terms of the title race, the Premier League race, really has their shit together. Everybody is inconsistent. Everybody's dropping points, apart from Villa, of course. But everyone is... all of your regular contenders seem to not quite be...
it is only 4 games in, 5 games in.
We're only 4 games
though.
in, sure. But I think that does make... or is conducive for a good league. And entertaining stuff, but I don't really know where this came from. We'll speak briefly
what do you
about
think?
West Ham because they deserve some credit here as well, right? And obviously FaceTime Moyes sitting at home with Snapchat filters on was the greatest manager of all time. Apparently West Ham having good results in the last couple of weeks, and then he was back today, and I was joking around the stream. I was like 20 minutes in, they're 3-0 down. I was like, Moyes out, of course. But
just make the assistant manager the full-time manager.
Sure, they come back and 3-3. So West Ham, I definitely think we spoke about Everton's resilience and ability to get themselves back into games. West Ham at 4 games ago pre-season, I thought might be a candidate for the drop. I think they look far from that. I think they're one of the teams that's going to be in the middle with your Leedses and your Southamptons and your Newcastles probably. A kind of uneventful season ahead for them, but that's probably what they want, right? An uneventful.
So what do you feel about Spurs now after that game? Do you still feel potential title challengers, top 4?
I think they look good enough in the first 30 minutes, and Son looks good enough, and Kane looks good enough, and Bale's back, and presumably it's going to be good enough that they can challenge for the league. But again, in other seasons, I'd imagine this is the sort of thing that might rule them out. But this season, especially with Van Dijk being injured now, I think the league is now wide open, and they could for sure make a run at it. I think they're looking very good for top 4. And if Son and Kane, this partnership keeps firing on all cylinders, then the league is definitely within their grasp.
All right, I've made you wait. I've made you sit there. We decided to put the most exciting games at the top of the running order this week. So there was no favoritism. But United versus Newcastle, 4-1. Let's be honest, it was a little bit flattering.
Very flattering. Very flattering in terms of scoreline. I thought we did okay. I thought we we put on a decent performance. Missed the penalty, of course, first penalty that Bruno has had saved in the Premier League.
Keeper was off the line, by the way, for that.
Yep.
Just going to say it.
Yep.
If they're going to put that rule in, the keeper took a full step forward and he was a few yards closer to the ball. And I thought, I didn't think it was a penalty for all it's worth, but I thought once the penalty's been given,
100% a penalty, of course. But
I think it's a big issue with the VAR again, though. When they slow things down, everything has contact, right? And there's like natural movement when you watch it in full speed. Like I don't think it was a penalty at all. But anyway, they got to let him retake that if they're given a penalty in the first place. Callum Wilson nearly scores late on to make it 2-1. The game makes a great save and pushes it out in a way that a lot of keepers won't. So he passes by Callum Wilson, and then I would argue that Fernandes scores what has been the best goal of the season from a United standpoint for sure. The fluidity in the play, the way they brought it from back to front. It was Van de Beek who started it all. He played a little 1-2 in the middle of the park. He pings the ball into the pocket in between the defence and midfield, which a lot of United players fail to do. I think Matic does it when he's playing really well, but a lot of the time he's just a little bit more passive. And it was just a beautiful goal, the way Fernandes finished it. It was just beautiful. It was the best goal that he scored in his United career for sure, and everything about it was lovely. And it just makes me wonder, how does Ole Gunnar Solskjaer rest all those players, but he puts out a midfield, I think, of Fred, McTominay, and Fernandes? Is Van de Beek only going to play when Pogba and Fernandes don't play? Because if so, that is not the signing that you should have made. I understand that if either of those players get injured, then you want to have one replacement. But if he's not going to play unless both of them don't play, then it's a real big issue.
Redundant. Yeah.
It's a big issue.
I will say
he's a quality player, though.
Let's just cycle back quickly. We spoke about the penalty thing. That again is just outrageous. It comes down to consistency.
Just no consistency.
As I said on this very podcast, go back and listen to episode 1. If you're gonna give that decision where you're penalised for being off the line, fine. If that's a rule, fine. If you're gonna enforce it, fine. But to do it 1 week and then what are we 3 weeks removed from that decision, and all of a sudden it's like,
it's week 5. I said 4 because Villa have only played 4 games.
Right, whatever. It's like, okay, like 4 or 5 games in, like, we don't care about that anymore. By the way, like that, we decided that game on that decision, that rule. Yeah, we don't care about that now. And this game potentially could have been decided on that penalty not being retaken.
No,
so it's just like arbitrarily dishing out points based on bad application of rules. So I take issue with that. The second goal for United here comes very, very late on. It's like an 84, 86 minute win or something like that. It is started by Van de Beek winning the ball inside United's own half. You'll notice Fernandes is also at like left back when this move starts. Like he plays a pass from like left back. And I think this speaks a lot to what is going on at Manchester United at the moment, in that Fernandes is that player. Bruno is that player who is taking games by the scruff of the neck, getting everyone around him. And there was these rumours of like a bust up with Solskjaer at halftime where he was apparently laying into everybody, as he should. That is exactly the sort of player that you 100%. Need if you're going to be winning Premier League titles, if you're going to be challenging for top 4, if you're going to be winning football matches. And it really was sort of characterised the player that Bruno is, that 80-something minutes in the game, he picks the ball up in his own half. He plays the ball inside. I think the ball then is played, is it Mata who plays the ball back out wide to him on the pivot? Yeah. Who again is a player often overlooked, but I think a masterful player on the ball. Like, just he still has a lot to offer United, and I think certainly in like a not leadership capacity but experience capacity as well. We've seen a little bit of that. I think Mata has still got some quality in him, but as well Marcus Rashford strikes me as a sort of player like Bruno who cares and fights and plays quote unquote.
He's a Manchester lad, right?
Like, he's a Manchester United player in a sense
in the
of
academy,
desire to win, and that sort of we will not lose until the final whistle has gone. That was why Alex Ferguson was so successful, and this goal was not only showed that will to win, but just out and out quality. I mean, the pace of
Yeah.
the attack, the pace of the counter, the interplay, the fluidity of it, the finish, everything from start to finish. This is a potential like United goal of the season candidate. From there, Wan-Bissaka scores, Rashford scores. But again, even the 4-1 winner, the game's dead and buried after Wan-Bissaka finishes for 3-1, arguably dead and buried after the Bruno goal. But I think it speaks volumes that 94 minutes, Bruno picks this ball up deep inside his own half again, and Rashford is making that run in behind the defence. He's just gone, and he's like, the ball comes in over the top, it's a pinpoint ball, and Rashford takes a touch, and his first touch just drives him straight towards the goal and finishes it off.
The corner flag.
And it's just like they're switched on till the last. Rashford and Bruno, I think, if those, to me, the Maguire situation right now, Bruno's just been made captain for the Paris Saint-Germain game, midweek game that is tonight. We're recording on Tuesday. But it's like, to me, Bruno is such a more natural leader than Maguire is, and is demonstrating that with his on-field display and the way he leads
by
himself.
Vocally and also with how he plays.
Yeah, so I mean, it's tough because you don't want to say to Maguire just at the start of the season when he's going through what he's going through.
Listen, I think he has to get it. I think he should have got it stripped at the start of the season.
Yeah, that might have been the mistake when all this stuff went down in the summer, to be like, okay, no captaincy, whatever.
The thing about it is, if you do that, you're kind of you're guilty without charge of what happened in Greece, and I get that, but I also just think that Bruno Fernandes, agreeing with you, is a much more natural captain. And I always like to have the captain as in the midfielder. I just do, because I think of Roy Keane, I think of Vieira, and they're like my idols in terms of captains, like people just leading from the middle and just like the general that can see and hear everyone.
It's a communication thing as well, right?
Yeah.
You've got to be able to talk to your attackers, talk to your defense. You guys need to be doing this. You guys need to be doing this. If you're a goalkeeper, captain, or whatever, you don't have control out on the field. If you're up front, you can't. It's harder to get messages and talk to defense or rally the defense, right? I've always been a big proponent of that midfield core. That's where your skipper needs to sit. Maybe that's
absolutely
like old school Mike Bassett.
I think so. 4-4 fucking 2.
But so be it.
As a fan, I want to know. Obviously, there's frustrations with the way you started the season, but it must be even more frustrating because this season legitimately does feel like it's up for grabs. And United were arguably the most informed team towards the end of last season. You signed Fernandes, changes the fortunes of your season. Of course, things don't go completely well in the Europa League, but you make 3 semi-finals, and then you have this foundation to build on. Solskjaer has rid the club of the toxic players he believed that weren't pulling for the shirt the way they should be. He's investing in youth. He's not making any more last-minute signings. Until then, you'd sign Cavani, you don't sign Sancho, you don't get your targets. Apparently, they were in for Grealish, but that didn't happen because they're focusing on Sancho. And now it's, as a fan, like, how frustrating is it that if you had just continued in that vein of form, you could have been thereabouts by the end of the season. Well, I don't think United can win the league this season. I just don't.
I don't think we can win the league this season, just because of the fragility that we've shown in some of the other games. But what's frustrating is we have moments of such brilliance, such potentially league-winning brilliance.
Such good players in your team.
We do have such good players in the team, and it's the inconsistency of it all which is the most frustrating, because it's one of those where, when you're at school, your teachers get mad because they know you can do it. So when you don't,
that was every school report I got.
It's maddening, right? If you can't do it, it's like, we can't do it. We're rubbish. Like, you write it off. But the fact that we can, and we can beat teams, makes it all the more frustrating. And of course,
do you think you'll be thereabouts for top 4?
Yeah, I think we'll be top 4. I really, really, truly think that we will be top 4. I think it's going to end up something like Liverpool, City,
the usual suspects,
Spurs, United.
Yeah. Okay.
But Arsenal.
Anyway, you got
like it's the thing is that I think that is the beauty of these first 5 game weeks, Fintan, is that there's still 7 teams that could be top 4 probably.
I guess you forgot Aston Villa.
Everton. 8 with Villa. 8 with Villa.
Now, of course. Anyway, you got your first win. It was a bit flattering, but it takes a little bit of pressure off Solskjaer going into a massive few weeks. Your next few weeks are just huge game, like constantly. If Solskjaer comes out of these with good results, I think he's got to the end of the season. But it would not shock me if he was to lose 3 on the bounce now with PSG, Chelsea, and then whoever the next game is, that he's gone.
Yeah.
So it will be an interesting and important couple of weeks as a United fan, of course. But moving on to the most informed team in Europe, the only team in the Premiership with a 100% record is Aston Villa, who win 1-0 versus Leicester in what no doubt was the worst game of football that I've watched from start to finish in a long time. But I think that speaks wonders and is a beautiful thing for Villa, because this Leicester team, admittedly missing Vardy, only could bring Maddison off the bench, um, didn't have Ndidi. They weren't at full strength, no doubt about it. But we completely nullified them to the point where they didn't really have a chance at all. They might have had one shot, I think, in the first half where Martinez made a decent save. But other than that, it was almost a complete shutout. And for this Aston Villa team, who like last year had one of the worst defenses in the league towards the end of the season, if not the worst. I'm not, maybe we weren't the worst, but we were definitely bottom five. To have this massive turnaround and to just be able to hold off them, and then just have Ross Barkley pulling out the worldie in the 92nd minute. Hannah was wondering what was wrong with me, because Hannah's my fiance, friend doesn't know. I was watching the football in my office, and usually I'm quite animated watching football, and there's a lot of screaming and shouting, but nothing happened. So I'm just sitting here quiet, and then in the 92nd minute, I'm just like, wow, for a solid like 2 or 3 minutes. It was great, and it's so exciting to be an Aston Villa fan, Sprag. It's been a decade since we had Martin O'Neill at the team where we were challenging for top four. That's like when he left, so maybe 15 years ago, when we had a team that I could enjoy to watch. But this team, it's just class, mate.
For the
It
benefit,
is so much fun.
for the benefit of our audio-only listeners, Fintan is the most animated I've seen him for a long, long time, and I've visibly slumped down in my chair, having to listen to whatever this is. I mean, it's got to be a dream start, isn't it? Total dream
Right.
start. And
We
this
have-
this game, this late winner is like, it's a game that could have gone either way. I watched bits and bobs of it. Like I said, I kind of drifted out of it because it was very uneventful.
It was horrendous.
But it's
It
just
was
one of
horrendous
those where
game
it's
of
like
football.
it's a dream finish again, right? Like a 92-minute worldie, new signing,
We have
winner, 3
3
points.
clean sheets out of 4 when there's absolute record numbers of goals being scored. The only player to score it against is Mo Salah. And Jack Grealish, as you were saying at the beginning of the show that we might touch on it, I do not understand. I always said that I am aware that I'm biased, but if you ask me about, say, Tyrone Mings, I think if England go to the Euros with Tyrone Mings as your centre back, there is no chance that you win the thing. Because as much as I'm biased, I can see that he's just not good enough for that international level. I think Connor Cody at Wolves is a much better option. But Jack Grealish is the only player in England that glides past players and links the midfield and defence the way he does. The one thing I can see a little bit frustration for Southgate is that he does tend to drift a little bit, and Southgate likes his rigidness and his like solid foundation and try and nick a goal. And I don't see him playing very expansive football versus the bigger teams. But when so many international games are decided by a couple of moments and teams often nullify each other, Grealish is just the absolute perfect player that needs to be in that England setup. And I really think he needs to be in the first 11. But when you say Harry Kane, Raheem Sterling, Jadon Sancho, as the front three, then where do you put Grealish? Because is he going to be trusted in a midfield tree by Southgate? I don't know. But the fact that he got no minutes for England after being man of the match, I don't know what kind of message he's sending. I don't know if there's issues with Southgate on a personal level that we actually are unaware of. Grealish is obviously getting his head down. It's not going to say anything bad because he's not an idiot. He knows what he needs to say. He'll just praise Southgate and say the right things and not moan. But he is so good, and he's the best player that I've seen in the Villa shirt by a million miles. It's not even close.
Yeah,
We've never had
he's excellent. There was one pass,
the back heel,
that I actually saw whilst watching, and I commented on stream because I was watching whilst I was streaming, and I was like, this is just unbelievable. It's just it really is he's a cut above, and the fact that he didn't play more minutes for England, especially as I mentioned earlier in non-consequential games like these games, like
they
whatever,
don't matter.
it's so meaningless. Arsene Wenger came out this week or last week and said like the Nations League needs to be scrapped or redone or whatever, because I don't know who came up with it, but it's just the most overly unnecessary,
Just obviously a money grab, I would imagine.
System of friendly, quote unquote, but not friendlies, whatever it is. Just like it needs to be redone. That's a whole other thing. But no one cares about these games other than let's see what this person does in the team, this person does the team, this person does the team. How does this work, right? Like this is the time where you want to give international experience to people. Like, we don't want to bed you in a qualifier, or like, let's get you international experience, get you used to it, so like when we have a game that actually matters, you're ready to play. And to leave Grealish on the sidelines, I think
But he
was
brought,
a
like, I think
travesty.
I'm a big
Travesty.
Dominic Calvert-Lewin fan. Obviously, I talked about it at the beginning of the show as well. But he brought Dominic Calvert-Lewin onto the left wing
Why?
instead of playing Grealish on the left
He's
wing,
not going to
where
be
he's
if
the
he
most
plays. He
informed
plays
player
up
in the
top. Surely
league.
DCL. You know.
Yeah. Okay. Maybe you could argue Son, but like he's the most informed player. The top three, right? Maybe Son's a little bit more informed. He also plays in left wing, but of the English players, he's the
Sure.
most informed player in the league,
Bottom up.
along with Calvert-Lewin. Yeah.
So
So
what's going
I
on?
don't
And I
understand
think
it.
again there was the issue where Mason Greenwood got left out after the incident, which I'd say the incident where they travelled and they whatever
Young
broke
lads
curfew.
invite a few
Young
girls
lads,
back to the
sure.
hotel.
But
Probably shouldn't have done it, but it
shouldn't
is
have
what
done
it
it. But
is.
again, it's like, are we gonna hold down talent because they are a bit of an arsehole, or they do stuff that's not,
For
within?
18-year-olds,
To me,
like,
that is the sort of thing when it's a PE teacher's approach of, and I know it's like a cliche thing now, like he's a PE teacher, whatever. But and same people say the same thing about Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. But it's like when you're at school and you're a bit of an asshole, you don't get picked to play the football team because the PE teacher doesn't like you, and it's like, we're
he
whatever,
has
a
the
nice
power.
school, and our team will play in a certain way, and it's characterized by the young men that you are, and it's like, that's fine if you're trying to mold like a 15-year-old kid who's not going to do anything else. But these are professional footballers on an international stage. If Grealish is a bit of an asshole, which I have my suspicions, right?
I don't think so, man.
It's hard to say, but
I
like,
can see he's
you
an
can
easy
see like
target.
he could rub some people up the wrong way, right? It's very easily
Yeah.
done. But he's a top quality footballer. And the same Mason Greenwood and Phil Foden, if they went and did this, whatever, like broke curfew, shouldn't have done it, oh, naughty boys, whatever. They're both quality footballers. Don't hold their England chances back because they've misbehaved. Discipline them, but they've still got to play for the national team. And England has a weird thing of doing this, of vilifying our own players to a point. The press do it, the
You
media
think
have done
Wayne
it.
Rooney, David Beckham,
Rooney, they did it too. Beckham, they did it too. And
Michael Owen a little bit.
and it's like, right now we have such an incredible crop of young talent. Can we please just like let them do what they want and just not leave anyone out of the squad for some petty personal squabbles? Like,
I
just
will
let
say that
Grealish
I can see
give him a chance.
both sides though, because if Southgate doesn't have any sort of discipline, they just keep running over him because they think he's a soft touch. If that's Jose Mourinho as the national manager, or somebody with a little bit, if that's Pep Guardiola, like they're not probably
I
trying
guess
to
they
pull
don't
this
get
shit
questioned,
off.
yeah, and yeah, I mean, there is a line. They have to not be able to just run riot and like, I'll do what I want when I want because I'm that good. I get that, but at the same
Yeah.
time, like, let's not have Jack Grealish not fulfilling the potential just because he, was drunk on the streets of Magaluf 3 years ago, or whatever.
3 years ago, man, that was way longer. That was like, he's what, 24? That was like 7 years ago or something. 7 years ago, mate.
That's what I mean. Mate. Let
Anyway,
it lie. Let the boy play.
moving on. Aston Villa are probably going to
Okay,
finish top two.
before we move on, because obviously dream start for Villa, 4 wins, 4 games, 4 wins, 3 clean
More
sheets.
points than we had at 12 games into the season last year. Just
Incredibly
unbelievable things.
fortunate. The great escape to stay in the Premier League. I mean, just a ridiculous run
Should
of
have been gone.
results.
Should have been
gone,
dead.
and in the Championship and whatever implications come along with that. You stayed in the league. You've won 4 out of 4. Take your Villa cap off. Leave that to the side. Villa fan off. Realistically, where can you finish this season?
12th.
You'd be happy with top 12?
I'd be happy if we threatened to break into the top 10.
Yeah.
I really would.
Yeah.
We talked about how competitive the top half of this Premier League is going to be in an episode either last week or the week before. We are fourth favourites to be top of Christmas according to the bookies right now because of the start we've had and the fixtures we have. So we have Leeds next, and we could just ride this wave of momentum. But there's going to be a correction of this form at some point. We're going to go through a rough patch. We could have a Jack Grealish injury that absolutely rips the spine out of our team. We've signed extremely good players, which means that we are not completely dependent on Grealish the way we were in years gone by. When he was injured, we were a League One team, let alone a Championship team. But I really just I just don't want to get carried away the way a lot of people are getting carried away. And I hope when we go through a bit of a rut and we're not in good form, people can realize we got promoted ahead of schedule. We stayed up when we should have went down. And now we are in a great place and we have signed really well and it's looking very promising. But like there's talk of top 4 challenges and top 6 challenges. And I'm just like, what are you talking about? We stayed up on the last day of the season, which was 5 football games ago for us.
Yeah.
How can you be talking? We have, of course, done great things, and I'm super excited. And they are not only doing very well, but they're also a lot of fun to watch. Besides this Leicester game, Dean Smith wants to play the attacking, expansive football, and it's a like I said, it's a joy to watch. But we have all of the usual top 6, not including Arsenal, not including Leicester, not including like an Everton team. So that's like the top 9 already, right?
Yeah.
Thereabouts. Maybe I've just said not including Leicester when they actually were top 6 last year. So there's one more spot outside that though, and could we go for it? Yeah, of course we could. But I think Leeds look great. Like Wolves are going to be thereabouts, challenging for top 4 and top 6. I think more likely they're ahead of us in their development. So if we can challenge for the top 10, I think it's an amazing season. And I think if we challenge for top 10, we will go out and next year we will sign 1 or 2 players that are 30 to 50 million quid. Like I think that's the kind of owners we have.
Yeah.
We've got the foundation, we've built the spine. Probably one of those signings, if things go really well, would have to be Ross Barkley on a permanent if he wants to stay. And then we sign one other player.
I can't see why Ross Barkley wouldn't want to stay at Villa, because the opportunities
if
that
he goes and
he's
scores
had
20
and
Premier League goals this season,
teams, and now he's in a team that's moving in the right direction and looks to be a key part of it.
Yeah,
I think that's
but
a perfect place for him, right?
If he scores 20 league goals this season and he's too good to be sitting in a team that in 3 or 4 years will be challenging for top 6 or top 4, potentially if we invest correctly and move along rightly, he's in the peak of his career and Tottenham come in and they bid for him. Can he really? Maybe he gets back in the Chelsea team.
True.
I don't know. They've signed so many. But anyway, that's how I feel. Moving on. City versus Arsenal. Not a great game.
No, and I think
1-0.
It speaks volumes as to why this is so far down in our like viewing order, if to use that terminology, that I watched it and it was just like kind of a little bit uneventful, wasn't it? For the 2 teams involved.
I would argue that Arteta is making great strides with this Arsenal team. I really do. They're a lot more solid than they've been in the past decade. Teams used to kind of see Arsenal as a soft touch, I think, when it was in the top 6 game. I think Aguero has got an obnoxious amount of goals against Arsenal as well as he does against most of the top 6 teams. But I think maybe Arteta shows a little bit too much respect versus the big teams and tries to hit them on the counter. And he had success in it last year, I believe, in the semi-final and the final of the FA Cup. They beat, I think, Chelsea and City. Or maybe Liverpool was one of them. I'm not sure, but it was two of the big teams. I think it was City. And it obviously worked for him, and he has the most potent counter-attacking player in the league in Aubameyang, who's the most lethal finisher and one of the quickest players in the entire league. So I can understand why he wants to do it. And they had chances in this game. Ederson made an unbelievable save in the second half versus Saka, and they had a couple of chances, but overall it was a somewhat comfortable win for City, I would say. Yeah. Sergio Aguero being back is a massive boost. He's going to just change how they play. He's the focal point. He scores so many goals. He obviously many years ago bought into the way Pep wants him to play, and he's just become an even better player than he already was. They signed this Diaz player who I admit I don't know a lot about, but I've read some reports that he's shored up the defense somewhat. So City might be the favourites for the title. But the one more thing on that game, which I've seen you tweeting about, even though it was 1-0 to City. How has Kyle Walker got away with Kung Fu kicking
Sweet Chin Music, mate?
Gabriel in the head.
I'll demonstrate.
For those who give us a walkthrough audio. Okay, I'll tell you.
I'm not the most agile man. His leg is here. His leg is there. I have very long legs. That's 8 foot of limb, right? He's kicked a man nearly in the head, nearly straight in the head. And there's a picture on my Twitter. I mean, you for those who watch the game, you'll be able to see it. How is that not? Tell me. Just tell me. How's it not high foot?
I honestly don't know, mate.
It is a high foot.
I think if it's outside the box, they give high foot every
it.
Single time. Yeah, embarrassing, really, but frustrating for Arsenal. City get the win, and looking solid.
New favourites for the league, I think
probably. I mean, they did get smashed 5-2 by Leicester, so it's just. But then they didn't have Diaz then, so I don't know.
It's tough.
It's so hard to know.
Just to touch back on the Sergio Aguero situation, I saw an article this week saying that Pep Guardiola says Aguero will have to prove his worth in order to earn a new contract at Man City, which struck me as quite unbelievable, given that Sergio Aguero is.
It's very disrespectful. I mean,
It's
Sergio
incredibly
Aguero is a
disrespectful, I
legend.
thought. I mean, he's an absolute world-class talent, and I don't use that term lightly. He is an incredibly good striker who's given a lot to Man City and scored innumerable valuable goals for Man City. And to come out and say, yeah, he's got to prove his worth, it's like, sure, I think he's.
It might be a little bit
that.
of.
I don't know what's
It
going on
might
with
be a
that.
little bit
That's
of
something to
mind
keep an eye on,
games.
but it's just a weird. It just strikes me as a weird angle to take to a player who is absolutely
At some
key
point,
to
though,
them winning the league.
I guess he's on a massive contract, and Guardiola might be thinking, I can't continue to invest that money into him as my main striker if he's not producing the goods and if he sits out a full season. But just don't put that in the public. If
Yeah,
that's something that needs to be
that's like
said,
an
say
arm
it
around
to
the shoulder,
Sergio.
just like, hey,
He's going to have a statue outside of the Etihad in a couple of years, the way that David Silva got immortalized by the statue, because they don't have any legends, because they're a League Two team that got bought by oil money. But anyway, that's the reality. And so they need to put a statue of Sergio Aguero, and they need to treat him like royalty, and he should leave on his own terms to a certain degree.
He should be given an honorary chairmanship of the club when he leaves and retire the shirt, because that's the only history they have going back 6 years. Okay, Fintan, I didn't make much of that game, City versus Arsenal, and again, it's like there's a reason we're not really talking too much about it, because nothing happened. Speaking of which, Fulham fans, how's your relegation party going? Paddy Power paid out on Fulham being relegated, game week 4, or they did, or 3. Paddy Power have seen enough. I've seen
Honestly,
enough.
I think it was game week 2. Aston Villa beat them in game week 2.
And they were gone. They're gone. They're gone. Get them out of the league. Get them out of the league. Don't care.
Sheffield United obviously haven't looked too hot so far either.
Don't care. Sheffield United won. Fulham won. Couldn't care less.
All right, hold on. Before we run through the absolute drip drab at the end of this podcast, there was Leeds versus Wolves, which I watched, and Leeds again. I'm not going to go on it for too long, because Leeds looked absolutely quality yet again. Their intensity in their attacks and the way that Bielsa has them playing football is beautiful, and it is Leeds versus Aston Villa next Friday night under the lights. I think it's going to be a class game. There's a little rivalry there. We don't care as much about the Leeds fans as they care about us, but we went up when they didn't, and they cried about it all season. And Patrick Bamford is not the most liked by Villa fans for a dive, so that'll be interesting. But the Wolves team are class act, and their goal was lucky. Jimenez took a shot from outside the box. I think it was Phillips deflected it in with the header. But Leeds are going to beat most of the bottom teams, is what I think. I think they're going to. Oh, they're definitely going to be fine. But I think they're going to have the odd 4 or 5-0 result against your Burnley and even maybe a Newcastle or something. The way they play is so exciting. I love the way they play. I think it's going to be a great game, even though I'm not really talking about Leeds versus Wolves now. I'm talking about Leeds versus Villa to look forward to it. But yeah, they're unlucky. They look great. I'm still excited. I still think they have potential to be the greatest promoted team. I'm really dying on that hill. If Leeds end up with 42 points after me bigging them up this much, I'm never going to be able to make another podcast.
It's Egypt to win the World Cup 2016 all over again.
Listen, the podcast. Egypt to win a World Cup thing was a joke, okay? Obviously, I wasn't being serious.
It didn't sound funny at the time, and it sounds a lot funnier now. Wolves to me are a little bit surprising, because they've lost Jota, of course, and the lad who went to Spurs, who escapes
Doherty.
me.
Matt Doherty.
Correct.
I just said that like an English person. I hope nobody from Ireland listens to it. I just said Doherty instead of saying Matt Doherty.
Matt Doherty.
The way you say it, English people, you came over here.
Don't get him started. Matt Doherty and Jota. And to me, that was...
There's no C. It's D-O-H.
Who gives a shit, honestly, mate? So Matt's gone, Jota's gone, and I actually thought that could mean the Wolves. They've signed. They're Portugal national team, aren't they?
They actually wore the Portuguese kit in this game. Did you see that?
Yeah.
It's a piss take.
It is. It's a joke.
It actually looked like the Portuguese kit. It's like George Mendes is sitting up there, and they're like, "What colours we going this year?" He's like, "We're going to Portugal colours." Yeah, and they're like, George, look, listen, I know that we've a few dodgy things going on with you getting all these transfers in, but we can't be that obvious. We're going to Portugal colours. And they don't care.
They don't care, and it works, mate. It's working, and I thought that this could potentially, because obviously they've come up and they've sort of cemented themselves really well, and they were top 8 finish last season, maybe higher. And to me, this one was like a really testing season potentially. Lose a couple players, bring a couple players in, sure, but you can unbalance things. But it's a very good result away at Leeds, albeit a little bit of a fortunate one, and it looks like they're gonna keep on making strides. And this is a club who typically have been a bit yo-yo, Championship, Premier League. Obviously, they've had investment. Obviously, they've got like a new Portuguese regime in. But Wolves, I think, are another one.
They're run so well.
Yeah, top 6, top 8. They're going to be in thereabouts.
Maybe top 4 challenging.
And again,
it's there's only 2 other games, Sprag, to talk about. One, I'm going to tell you. No, I have 2 talking points.
Go on.
Palace versus Brighton. Nobody cares. But Palace were the only team ever to have 1 goal in a game that was a penalty, and it was their only shot. That says enough. Moving on. If you're a Palace versus Brighton fan, change allegiance. It's time. Aston Villa are up and coming. It's time. Palace, Villa, basically the same colours. It's all good. Just come on over to us. West Brom versus Burnley. That is a game that should not be.
If West Brom and Burnley were playing in my back garden, I'd pull the curtains, mate.
Mate, they charged £15. For West Brom versus Burnley.
I want to say that the pay-per-view.
No, that's why I saved it for this. I wanted to save it for this.
Okay.
Imagine
it's a disgrace.
When they decided that they were going to charge £15 a game, which is absolute daylight robbery, they must have looked at the fixtures that are going to be that price and seen West Brom and Burnley and been like,
shit themselves.
I really don't know. I don't know if we could do this.
Would it be the lowest number of purchases on a pay-per-view event of all time?
Of
any sport. Now, comments, writers, our listeners. Perhaps you could, in the YouTube comments, or you could tweet us with the hashtag. What do we have?
At Spraggy, at Easy with Aces. We have no hashtag, but
OFAS. Hashtag OFAS. Only Fools and Scores.
Okay. Rolls off the tongue.
Anyway, no one's going to write in anyway. Write us in. Is there a lower purchase pay-per-view event than West Brom Burnley?
One of my friends' brothers bought that game.
Is there a lower satisfaction rate? Like, will anyone have ever bought a pay-per-view event and be less satisfied than someone who paid and watched West Brom draw 0-0, 0-0 with Burnley? I saw the BBC.
First nil all the season, by the way.
It's the first 0-0 of the season.
Which is crazy.
Yeah.
On game week 5.
And obviously it's behind a paywall. The BBC Twitter account, which isn't exactly edgy stuff,
it's
was
not
like,
the most edgy,
this is the worst game we've ever watched in our lives. So the BBC Twitter account is just like, this should not be viewed by human beings. Shout out to Newcastle fans on this subject of pay-per-view disgrace. They, instead of paying to watch the game, none of them watched it, of course, because they didn't pay for it, so they didn't watch it. And instead of paying the £15, they donated the £15 to charities in and around Newcastle. And raised over £20,000 or something, instead of giving it to
the Newcastle fans are unbelievable. They deserve to be a top 4 team.
So shout out to them for that. I thought that was great. And in short, fuck pay-per-view.
Yeah, it's absolute daylight robbery given all of the subscriptions there already is. But yeah, nobody cares about those last games. So moving on, we are going to do predictions for this week, and we're actually going to get a graphic made so that we can keep track of them, because so far we've made predictions and we don't know what we said. We just say them on a whim. So we'll both go Aston Villa versus Leeds.
Ooh. Villa Leeds. The dream continues. 2-1 Villa.
I'm gonna say 2-0 to Villa. I think it could also be like 4-4 or something though. West Ham at home versus Man City.
There's tough predictions this week. Who knows what's going to happen in so many of these games? There's so much inconsistency. 3-1 Man City.
I'm gonna say 4-0 Man City. They're gonna make a statement. Fulham versus Crystal Palace, and we have the first game of the week that we will not be covering next week. Let's move on. Man United versus Chelsea.
Go on then. 3-0 United.
To anyone who's a Fulham or Crystal Palace fan, I think it's going to be 1-0 to Palace. Man United versus Chelsea, I think it is going to be 4-3 to Chelsea.
You're an absolute clown. Can you book me in for 1-1 Fulham Palace as well, just for the graphic, I suppose?
Liverpool at home to Sheffield United.
Are you writing these down?
No, we're going to have a nice little recorded.
Oh yeah, it'll be recorded when it's all on the record. Liverpool Sheffield United. 4-0 Liverpool.
Okay, I was going to say 4-0, so I'll say 5-0.
No, say 4-0.
Southampton.
It's the same. 4-0 4-0.
No,
Say
I want
4-0.
to win. I'm here to win.
Pathetic. Southampton Everton. Danny Ings FC versus Everton.
I'm going to say 3-1 to Everton, but a Danny Ings goal.
I think no Ings goal this week. I think.
No. There's always an Ings
Okay,
goal.
2-1 Danny Ings goal.
Wolves at home to Newcastle.
2-0 Wolves.
3-1 Wolves. Arsenal at home to Leicester.
2-1 Arsenal.
I'm going to say 1-1. Brighton at home to West Brom.
Oh,
if that's on pay-per-view, mate.
That
is on
45 pounds on some paywall site.
I'm going to say 2-0 to Brighton.
And 1-1.
Burnley versus Tottenham.
3-0 Spurs.
I'm going to go 6-0 Spurs. I think they're just going to come banging out. I think Harry Kane, Son, Gareth Bale are going to come banging out. But anyway, that is the end of episode 3 of Only Fools and Scores. We will be back next week to see what we got right, what we got wrong. If you have any feedback, please get at us in the comments. You can tweet at myself at Easy with Aces or at Benjamin at Spraggy. We would like to get some segments, I think, at some point.
We'll get some segments. We've got some plans. We're moving forward with it. You'll notice a wonderful new graphic here on the YouTube channel this week. We'll get the predictions up, and we'll go over the predictions when we go over the games in game week 5 or whenever. We're recording on a Tuesday now. We are available everywhere you listen to podcasts. If you're watching on YouTube, but you'd rather listen on Spotify or whatever podcast app you use, you're almost certainly going to find us on that podcast app. Just search for Only Fools and Scorers. Again, if you've any suggestions or you want to comment about the pay-per-view situation and your worst pay-per-views of all time, things like that. Anything
before we go, I want a Sprag question to the people. The first episode we got, who was the striker who could do it in the championship?
We've got that.
But not in the Premiership.
That's what I want. What is the worst event ever put behind a pay-per-view?
True.
And
apologies.
Conversely, which is the least delivering? Because I'm sure there's been some like boxing fights where people have paid $24.99, stayed up till 5 a.m. and it's just like one punch KO. You know what I mean? So we're doing worst pay-per-views this week. But comment, rate, like, subscribe, listen, and you can tweet us. With whatever you like.
We really need a few subscribers because we haven't pushed this anywhere and we need to get over 1,000 so that we can do a few things with the channel. So that'd be greatly appreciated. Thank you. I will see you next week.
Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for listening. This is Only Fools and Scorers episode 3. We'll see you next week.